The sun had barely risen over the jagged mountains of EpicSciFy when Cale heard the frantic cries echoing through the forest. He was not a man who often ventured into danger, but something about those desperate sounds stirred him. He gripped the handle of his plasma blade and moved quietly, letting the thick undergrowth hide his approach. Through the trees, he saw her, a small girl no older than 10, tangled in a net that shimmered with alien energy. Her skin was pale and her eyes, wide with fear, reflected the morning light. Around her, strange creatures with elongated limbs and sharp claws prowled, their low growls cutting through the air like knives. Cale's heart raced, but he did not hesitate. He stepped forward, the light of his blade slicing through the shadows. The creatures hissed and lunged, but Cale was faster. One by one he disabled them, his movements precise and controlled. He didn't need to kill. A swift strike to the energy nets immobilized them without causing lasting harm. The girl looked at him with a mixture of fear and awe. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm Cale," he said, kneeling beside her. "I'm here to help." She tried to smile but failed. Thank you for saving me." Her voice was small, fragile, but there was a strength in it, a quiet courage that seemed unusual for someone her age. Cale cut the last of the energy nets and lifted her into his arms. The forest seemed to hold its breath as they moved through it. He noticed that the girl was not just scared, she was running from someone or something that she clearly did not want to meet. They reached a small clearing where sunlight fell like a warm blanket. Cale set her down gently. "Can you walk from here?" he asked. The girl nodded, though her legs trembled. "I think so." She clutched his arm. I don't know where to go." Kyle studied her carefully. She looked human, but there was an elegance to her that suggested she belonged to some important family, or perhaps a royal one. "Then we'll find somewhere safe," he said. "Come with me." They traveled for hours through the thick forest. Cale moved carefully, alert to any signs of danger. The girl did not speak much, only occasionally whispering her name, Leora. There was a sadness in her tone, a story that Cale could not yet understand. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, they arrived at a hidden cave known only to Cale. It was modest but secure, a place he had used many times while on missions in the wild territories. He helped Leora inside and set up a small fire. "You're safe here," he said, his voice firm. "No one can find you." Leora sat on a stone bench, her knees drawn to her chest. She looked at Cale, eyes full of questions. Why did you help me?" "You don't even know me," Cale shrugged. "Sometimes you just do what's right. That's all." He didn't tell her that he had seen too many innocent people die because others waited for a reason to act. He had learned long ago that hesitation often meant tragedy. For the first time, Leora allowed herself to relax, leaning back against the cool stone. "My mother, she'll come for me, won't she?" she asked softly. Cale frowned. "I don't know, but if she does, we'll make sure you're safe." Her eyes grew distant. "My mother, she is the Queen of Eldara. No one can stop her." "No one, except—" Her voice trailed off. Cale watched her, puzzled. "Except what?" The girl shook her head. "Nothing. I just hope she doesn't find me like this." Night fell over the cave and Kyle kept watch. There was something about Leora that felt important, more than just a child in danger. She had a quiet dignity, a presence that made even the stars seem to shine differently. Cale didn't understand it yet, but he sensed that rescuing her would change his life in ways he could not imagine. The next morning, Cale decided it was time to move. The cave was safe for the night, but it could not hide them forever. They needed a place where Leora could be protected, and where Cale could learn more about who she truly was. As they traveled toward the borderlands, Leora began to speak more, telling Cale small pieces of her story. She had been captured while exploring the outskirts of the Eldara Palace grounds. The creatures that had attacked her were trained hunters, sent to capture her by unknown enemies. She did not know why anyone would want to harm the daughter of the queen, but fear and caution had kept her silent until now. Cale listened quietly. Every detail mattered. He had faced dangerous situations before, but this was different. Leora was not just any child. She was royalty, and anyone who learned of her presence would stop at nothing to retrieve her. Days passed, and they finally reached a secluded settlement near the edge of Eldara's territory. The villagers were wary at first, but Cale's calm confidence and the child's innocence eased their fears. He arranged for a hidden room in a local inn where Leora could rest and recover. That evening, Cale sat outside thinking. He had saved many people before, but this felt personal. He did not yet know the full consequences of his actions, but he had made a choice. Leora's safety was now his responsibility, and he would not fail her. Suddenly, the air shimmered with energy, and Cale's senses went on high alert. A figure appeared at the edge of the settlement, a woman cloaked in silver and gold, radiating authority and strength. Her eyes scanned the area, stopping abruptly on Cale and Leora. Cale stepped forward, instinctively positioning himself between the woman and the girl. "Who are you?" he demanded, his hand on the hilt of his blade. The woman smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "I am Queen Alara of Eldara," she said, her voice like a melody that carried power and command. "And this child, my daughter. You have rescued her without knowing who she is. For that you belong to our clan." Cale froze. His mind raced. He had expected gratitude, perhaps concern, but not this. "Belong to your clan? What do you mean?" The queen stepped closer, her gaze steady and unyielding. "You have shown courage and honor by protecting my daughter. Our people honor those who act with bravery and integrity. By saving her life, you have bound yourself to us. You will serve as our ally and protector. This is not a request, it is our law, and it is now your fate." Cale's jaw tightened. He was no stranger to oaths or obligations, but this was unlike anything he had faced. He had acted out of instinct, not duty. Yet the queen's words carried weight, and he realized there was no easy way out. He glanced at Leora, who watched him with wide eyes. She seemed calm, as if she already understood what was happening. Cale felt a strange sense of responsibility, stronger than anything he had felt before. I will protect her," he said finally, his voice steady. "But I am no one's servant. I act by choice, not by law." The queen studied him carefully, then nodded. "Very well. Choice is respected. But know this, by saving her you are now part of Eldara." The morning sun spilled golden light over the Eldara settlement, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets. Cale had barely slept. He had spent the night thinking about the queen's words and what they meant. By saving Leora, he had tied himself to a royal clan, to responsibilities he had never imagined. But Cale was not a man to turn away from a challenge. He had faced danger before, and he would face it again, now with a young princess depending on him. Leora sat by the small window in her room, brushing her dark hair with careful, deliberate movements. She seemed calm, almost serene, but Cale knew better. Beneath that composed exterior, she was a child who had been chased, captured, and abandoned. The forest, the creatures, the unknown threats, she had faced them all alone, and now she relied on him entirely. Cale entered quietly. "We need to get moving," he said, keeping his voice low. "The queen will expect us soon. She will want you trained, and I will need to prove I am worthy to be part of your clan." Leora looked at him and smiled faintly. "I don't need training, Cale, I just need to survive." Cale chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Surviving is only the first step. You will need to learn how to defend yourself, how to move unseen, and how to think ahead. You may be a princess, but enemies do not respect crowns. They respect skill and courage." By mid-morning, they reached the palace gates. The queen was already waiting, her silver cloak gleaming in the sun. Her presence was commanding, yet there was a warmth in her eyes as she looked at Leora. "Cale," the queen said, her voice calm but firm, "you have shown courage by protecting my daughter. Now you must show that you can stand by her side in the trials to come." Cale nodded. "I will do whatever it takes." The queen gestured toward the training grounds beyond the palace. "First, you will learn the ways of the Eldara clan. Strength, speed, strategy, and loyalty. Your bond with my daughter will be tested. Fail her, and you fail us all." Cale did not flinch. He had trained in harsh conditions before, and he would not let fear control him now. Leora followed closely, her small frame walking with quiet determination. The training grounds were vast, filled with obstacles, weapons, and the sounds of other warriors in practice. Eldara soldiers moved with precision, their movements honed over years of discipline. Cale felt a twinge of respect and a surge of determination. "Your first lesson," said a tall, muscular instructor, "is awareness. Every movement, every sound, every shadow is a potential threat. You must anticipate danger before it arrives." Cale nodded and followed the instructor's commands. He moved through the obstacle course with careful precision, noticing small details: a shift in the wind, the rustle of leaves, the glint of sunlight on metal. Every step he took, he imagined an enemy watching, ready to strike. Leora surprisingly followed with ease. She was small, but her reflexes were sharp. She moved silently, almost like a shadow, her eyes scanning every corner. Kale watched her, impressed. She had survived on instinct, but instinct was only part of skill. By the afternoon, Kale and Leora were learning to use weapons. Kale had been trained with a plasma blade, but here, they introduced him to Eldara's traditional energy spear. It was light, fast, and deadly in skilled hands. Kale adapted quickly, using his experience to anticipate Leora's movements as she practiced beside him. "You are quick," the instructor said, watching their sparring, "but speed alone is not enough. You must understand your opponent and you must trust your partner." Kale glanced at Leora. "Trust me," he said softly. She nodded and they continued. Each strike, each block was a test of their coordination. Slowly, they began to move as a team, anticipating each other's actions and protecting one another. As evening approached, the training shifted to strategy and tactics. The instructor set up scenarios where Kale and Leora had to navigate through a simulated ambush. Alien hunters, unseen and cunning, moved through the terrain, forcing Kale to think quickly. "Remember," the instructor called, "the goal is not to fight every battle. The goal is to survive, complete your mission, and protect those who depend on you." Kale and Leora moved silently through the simulation, dodging attacks, using the terrain to their advantage, and communicating with subtle gestures. Kale realized that Leora was learning faster than he expected. Her mind was sharp, her instincts impeccable. It was as if surviving alone for so long had given her an edge most adults would never possess. After the exercises, Kyle and Leora sat by a fountain in the palace courtyard. Leora's eyes were bright, full of life, and a hint of mischief appeared in her smile. "I think I like this," she said softly. "I like being able to fight back." Kyle smiled. "You're a fast learner. But remember, skill alone is not enough. You need judgment, patience, and courage. And sometimes you need to trust others." Leora nodded, but her eyes grew serious. "I trust you, Kale, but what if they come for me again? What if they don't stop?" Kale reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we fight. We don't run. You saved yourself once, and I saved you. Next time we will both be ready. And no one will take you without facing us first." The next morning, news arrived that shook the settlement. Scouts reported unusual activity near the outer borders of Eldara territory. Creatures similar to those that had captured Leora, but in larger numbers. It seemed the enemies had learned of her escape and were organizing to retrieve her. The Queen convened a council and summoned Kale and Leora. "You see," she said, her voice grave, "your actions have consequences beyond what you imagined. Your presence is known, and those who wish harm upon Eldara will not wait. We must be ready." Kale listened carefully, noting every detail. The threats were real and time was short. But he felt no fear, only determination. Leora's hand brushed against his, a small but silent reassurance. He would not fail her. Over the next days, Kale trained relentlessly, sometimes alongside Leora, sometimes leading her through stealth exercises. They explored the forested borders, learning the terrain and setting traps. Kale taught her to read signs of movement, to detect even the faintest footprints or broken branches. One evening, while preparing for the night patrol, Kale paused to look at Leora. "You have changed," he said quietly. "You are no longer just a frightened child. You are a warrior in your own right." Leora smiled faintly. "I learned from the best," she said, teasing him slightly. Kyle chuckled, but his eyes were serious. He knew that what they were learning was not just practice, it was preparation for survival. Late at night, Kyle stood guard outside Leora's quarters. The wind carried strange scents from the forest, and the sounds of distant creatures reminded him that danger was never far away. He thought of the Queen's words. By saving Leora, he was now part of Eldara's destiny. He understood that fully now. The responsibility was immense, but he would not abandon it. Suddenly, a faint shimmer appeared near the edge of the palace grounds. Kale's instinct screamed. Someone or something was approaching. He moved silently, keeping to the shadows. As the figure drew closer, Kale saw it was not a creature but a scout, an Eldara warrior sent to check on the princess. Kale relaxed slightly but remained alert. The scout approached and nodded. "Princess Leora is safe," he reported. "But enemies are moving closer. We must prepare for what comes next." Kale's jaw tightened. He had hoped to delay confrontation, to give Leora more time to learn, but the enemy was already moving. The next test would not be a simulation, it would be real. Back in her room, Leora looked at Kale. The night was dark, but the air was alive with tension. Kale stood atop the palace walls, scanning the forest that surrounded Eldara. The scouts' warnings from the previous day had been clear. Enemies were moving closer. They were not ordinary creatures. These were trained hunters, skilled and relentless. Kale's grip tightened on his energy spear. He had trained for this moment, but training was one thing. Real danger was another. Beside him, Leora watched silently. Her eyes, wide and alert, reflected the faint light of the stars. She had grown stronger since their arrival at the palace. Her movements were confident, her mind sharp. Kale had trained her well, and she had proven herself capable. But he knew one thing. Courage alone would not be enough to face what was coming. A faint rustle echoed through the trees, and Kyle froze. He signaled for Leora to stay low. Shadows moved between the trunks, and Kale recognized the pattern. These were not random animals. They were coordinated, hunting with intelligence and precision. "Stay behind me," Kale whispered. Leora nodded, crouching low and letting him take the lead. The forest seemed to close in around them, every sound amplified. The snapping of branches, the whisper of leaves, the distant call of night birds. Suddenly, a creature burst from the undergrowth, its claws glowing faintly with energy. Kale reacted instantly, his spear moving in a smooth arc. The strike hit true, and the creature fell, stunned but alive. Leora's eyes widened for a moment. Then she moved forward, using a small blade to disable another attacker. "They're testing us," Kyle muttered. "They want to see how fast we react." The attackers kept coming, each wave more coordinated than the last. Kyle and Leora moved as one, anticipating each other's actions. Kale marveled at her skill. She was quick, precise, and fearless. She blocked, dodged, and struck with a determination that surprised even him. After what felt like hours, the forest fell quiet. The attackers had retreated, but Kale knew it was only temporary. They were being observed, studied, and the real assault would come soon. Kyle guided Leora back to the palace walls. "You did well," he said, trying to sound calm. "But this was just a test. The real danger is yet to come." Leora nodded, her small hands gripping her blade. "I'm ready," she said simply. Her voice carried no fear, only determination. The queen appeared on the balcony above them, her silver cloak glinting in the starlight. "You have done well," she said, her eyes scanning the forest. "But you must understand, the enemies of Eldara do not rest. They will strike when we least expect it. You must be vigilant at all times." Kale bowed slightly. "I understand, Your Majesty. We are ready." The queen's gaze softened as she looked at Leora. "And you, my daughter, have shown courage beyond your years. But courage alone cannot protect you. Knowledge, skill, and strategy are just as important. Remember this," Leora nodded. "I will remember," she promised. The night passed slowly. Kyle remained on guard, patrolling the walls while Leora rested inside. He could feel the tension in the air, a silent warning that the enemy was near. Every shadow seemed alive, every rustle suspicious. Kale's instincts told him that they would not wait long. By dawn, the first real attack came. A wave of hunters emerged from the forest, moving faster and more silently than before. They were armed with energy nets, blades, and strange devices that emitted pulses of light, capable of disrupting movement. Kale sounded the alarm, and the palace guards rushed to defend the walls. Kale and Leora positioned themselves strategically, using the obstacles of the walls and battlements to their advantage. The attackers moved with deadly precision, but Kale's experience and Leora's training allowed them to counter each strike. Leora leapt from the battlement to a lower platform, landing gracefully and blocking a net with her blade. Kale moved beside her, striking down an attacker before they could reach her. They fought seamlessly, their bond evident in every coordinated movement. "Kale," Leora called. "They're coming from the east gate, too." Kale's jaw tightened. The enemy was trying to divide their forces to force them into mistakes. "We hold the line," he said. "Stay close to me." Together they moved toward the east gate, where another wave of attackers had broken through the outer defenses. Kyle fought with precision, his spear cutting through energy nets and disabling weapons. Leora moved beside him, quick and agile, striking with accuracy and avoiding unnecessary risk. Despite their skill, the attackers were relentless. Kale realized they needed a plan, not just brute force. He glanced at Leora. "We need to lure them into the central courtyard," he said quickly. "The traps we set there will slow them down." Leora nodded, understanding immediately. "Lead the way," she said. They drew the attackers into the courtyard where Kale had prepared hidden traps, energy barriers, pitfalls, and entangling nets. One by one, the hunters were caught or delayed, giving the palace guards time to regroup and push back. Kyle and Leora moved through the chaos, their coordination flawless. Every move was calculated, every strike purposeful. The attackers began to falter, realizing that this was not an easy victory. The battle raged for hours, but finally, the attackers retreated, leaving the palace and its inhabitants unscathed. Kale and Leora stood amidst the aftermath, breathing heavily, their bodies tired but unbroken. The queen appeared once more, her expression unreadable. "You have done well," she said, her voice carrying both authority and pride. "But remember, this is only the beginning. Those who seek to harm us will not give up easily. You have shown courage and skill, but vigilance must never end." Kale looked at Leora, who was brushing dirt and leaves from her clothes. "We survived," she said softly, a small smile on her face. "Yes," Kale replied, "but the real challenge is still ahead. We need to be ready for whatever comes next." The queen approached them. "Kyle, Leora," she said, "your bond is now stronger than ever. You fought together, protected each other, and defended Eldara. This is the strength we need. But enemies will come again, and you must continue to grow, to learn, and to trust one another completely." Kale nodded. "We will be ready, Your Majesty. No one will harm her again." Leora's eyes met Kale's. "I trust you," she said quietly, "and I know you will protect me always." Kyle's heart tightened at her words. He had not expected such a small child to carry such unwavering faith in him. But he understood now why the queen had bound him to their clan. This was more than duty. It was honor, courage, and the promise of loyalty that could not be broken. The night fell again over Eldara, calm but filled with unspoken tension. Kale and Leora stood together on the palace walls watching the stars. They had faced danger and survived, but they both knew this was only the beginning. The forces against them were growing stronger, smarter, and more determined. Kale placed a protective hand on Leora's shoulder. "We will face them," he said softly. "Together. No matter what comes, we will not fail." Leora nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "Together," she agreed. The bond between them had been forged in battle, tested by danger, and strengthened by trust. Whatever challenges awaited, Kale and Leora would face them side by side, their courage and skill a shield for the kingdom of Eldara. And far beyond the forest, hidden in the shadows, new enemies watched, plotting their next move. The real war was only beginning. The sun rose over Eldara, painting the palace walls in gold and amber. Kyle stood at the edge of the training grounds, watching Leora move through her exercises. Her speed and precision had grown remarkably since the last attack. Every movement she made was deliberate, every strike calculated. Kale had trained many warriors in his life, but few had shown such determination and natural skill at such a young age. The quiet morning was shattered by the approach of the queen herself. Her silver cloak fluttered in the wind, and her eyes shone with a mix of authority and concern. "Kyle," she called, her voice clear and commanding. "We have news. Our scouts report increased activity near the northern border. The enemy grows bolder. It seems they have learned from their previous failures." Kyle's jaw tightened. He had expected this, but the certainty of it made the weight of responsibility feel heavier. "We will prepare," he said. Leora and I will patrol the borders and ensure nothing breaches the territory." The Queen studied him for a long moment. "You have shown courage and skill, Kyle. But loyalty and strategy will be tested now. The safety of Eldara rests not only on your strength, but on your wisdom. Do not underestimate what comes." Kyle nodded solemnly. "I understand, Your Majesty. We will not fail." As the Queen departed, Kale turned to Leora. "The northern border is where we'll begin. Today, you will apply what you've learned. Observation, strategy, and combat skills. Everything. Are you ready?" Leora's eyes were bright with determination. "I'm ready," she said, adjusting her grip on her small energy blade. "We can do this." They set out toward the northern forests, moving silently between the trees. Kyle led the way, teaching Leora to read subtle signs of movement, broken branches, disturbed leaves, and faint footprints. Every detail mattered. The forest was alive with hidden dangers, and Kale wanted Leora to understand that survival depended on constant vigilance. Hours passed without incident, but Kale sensed something lurking just beyond their vision. The forest seemed too quiet, too still. "Stay close," he whispered. "They're here, but hidden. Watch the shadows, listen to the wind." Suddenly, a shrill whistle pierced the air. From behind the trees, a group of hunters emerged, armed with energy nets and sharp blades. They were faster and more organized than the last wave. Kyle and Leora moved into action instantly. Kyle struck first, his spear slicing through a net aimed at him. Leora ducked low and struck another hunter with her blade, moving with surprising confidence. The enemies advanced, but Kale and Leora anticipated their movements, blocking and countering with fluid precision. The battle pushed them toward a clearing, where Kale had noticed a natural trench. "Leora, this way," he called, and she followed without hesitation. They moved into the trench, gaining a temporary advantage. The hunters were forced to climb down carefully, slowing their attack. Kale's mind raced. He needed a plan, not just brute force. He glanced at Leora. "Use the environment," he whispered. "Trap them here. Force them into the narrow passage near the rocks. That's where they'll be vulnerable." Leora's eyes lit up with understanding. Together, they maneuvered the hunters toward the rocky passage. Kale struck with precision, disabling one attacker, while Leora used her small frame to slip between their lines, cutting nets and entangling weapons. The hunters realized they were being led into a trap too late. Kale triggered a concealed energy net, capturing several attackers at once. Leora rolled to the side, striking another, and the remaining hunters hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Kale seized the moment. "Push them back," he shouted. "Drive them out of our territory." With coordinated strikes, they forced the remaining attackers to retreat into the forest. Kale and Leora stood together, breathing heavily, adrenaline pumping through their veins. They had won this battle, but Kale knew it was only a temporary victory. The enemy would return, stronger and more cunning. As they returned to the palace, Kale noticed the tension in Leora's expression. "You're worried," he said gently. She nodded. "I know they'll come again. Next time it won't be just a few hunters, it could be an army, and I don't want anyone else to get hurt because of me." Kyle placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We will face them together. You are not alone. And you are stronger than you think. That strength will inspire others to fight alongside us." Back at the palace, the Queen awaited their return. Her expression was unreadable as she observed the two of them. "You have done well," she said, "but courage alone will not secure Eldara. Kale, your loyalty and skill are clear, but the true test will come soon. You must be prepared to make difficult choices, decisions that will affect not only the princess, but the entire kingdom." Kyle nodded. "I am ready, Your Majesty. Whatever comes, I will act wisely and protect her." The Queen's gaze softened slightly. "Good. I will trust you to do so. But remember, enemies are not always obvious. Betrayal can come from those you least expect. Watch carefully, trust carefully." The warning weighed heavily on Kale. He had always relied on instinct and skill, but now he realized that strategy and judgment were just as important. Leora looked up at him, sensing his thoughts. "We can handle it," she said simply. "Together." Kale nodded, grateful for her faith. "Together," he agreed. Days passed and training continued. Kale and Leora refined their skills, practiced new strategies, and strengthened their bond. Leora's agility and quick thinking impressed even the Queen's seasoned instructors. Kyle watched her with pride, realizing that she was no longer just a child in need of protection. She was becoming a capable young leader in her own right. Then, one evening, a message arrived from a neighboring settlement. The envoy, breathless and frantic, reported unusual activity near the eastern border. Strange figures had been seen moving at night, observing villages and disappearing before they could be confronted. The enemy was expanding its reach, probing Eldara's defenses. The Queen called an emergency council. Kyle and Leora were summoned. "The threats are growing," she said, her tone grave. "The enemy seeks to test us to find weaknesses. Kyle, your bond with Leora is essential. Together you must anticipate and counter these attacks. The safety of Eldara depends on it." Kale listened carefully, studying maps and reports. Here, the sun rose over Eldara, but there was no warmth in its light. The northern forests, usually calm and green, were filled with tension. Kale stood on the palace walls, gripping his energy spear tightly. Scouts had reported a massive enemy force approaching, far larger and more organized than any they had faced before. This was not a test or a small raid. This was an invasion. Beside him, Leora adjusted her small blade, her eyes scanning the distant tree line. She had grown stronger, faster and wiser since the first attack. Her movements were precise, her mind alert. Kale could see the determination in her eyes, the courage that refused to be shaken by fear. She was no longer just a child to protect. She was a leader, a symbol of hope for Eldara. "The Queen is expecting you both," called a palace guard, breaking the silence. Kale and Leora descended the stairs quickly, meeting the Queen in the grand hall. Her silver cloak shimmered and her expression was calm but resolute. "The enemy has gathered near the northern ridge," she said. "They are strong, but they are not invincible. Kale, Leora, your bond, your skill, and your courage are what will lead Eldara to safety. Today you will not just defend, today you will inspire." Kale bowed slightly. "We will not fail, Your Majesty." Leora stepped forward, her small voice firm. "We are ready. Together we will protect Eldara." The Queen's eyes softened. "Good. Trust in each other and trust in your strength. The people of Eldara are counting on you." Kyle and Leora moved to the walls, positioning themselves with the guards and trained warriors. The enemy was approaching fast, moving silently through the forests. Kale could see their shapes, tall, sleek, and armed with glowing weapons. They were organized, attacking with strategy and cunning, but Kale was ready. "Remember," he whispered to Leora, "we fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone here. Watch the lines, anticipate their moves, and protect each other." Leora nodded, gripping her blade tightly. "I will follow you, Kale. Always." The first wave of attackers appeared at the tree line. They moved with precision, striking toward the palace walls, but Kyle and Leora were ready. Kale's spear struck first, slicing through the energy nets that tried to entangle him. Leora darted forward, her movements quick and agile, disabling weapons and disarming attackers. The battle erupted, the clash of energy blades and shields echoing through the courtyard. Kale moved with calm determination, his experience guiding him, while Leora mirrored his actions with uncanny precision. Together they moved as one, defending their position while countering enemy attacks. "Kale," Leora called out. "They're trying to flank us on the left side." Kale glanced quickly, spotting the movement. "Fall back to the central courtyard. The traps are ready there." They led the enemies into the courtyard where Kale had prepared hidden barriers and pitfalls. The attackers stumbled, slowed by the traps, giving the defenders the advantage. Kale struck one enemy with a swift move, while Leora disabled another, their teamwork flawless. But this enemy was stronger, smarter. They adapted quickly, using speed and numbers to press forward. Kale realized this would not be a simple fight. Strategy, skill, and courage would all be tested. "Hold your ground," Kale shouted to the warriors. "Do not let them break through." Leora moved beside him, striking with deadly precision. She was smaller, yes, but every attack carried purpose and strength. Kale marveled at her courage. She was facing enemies many times her size without hesitation. The battle raged for hours. The enemies pressed forward, but Kale and Leora, backed by Eldara's warriors, held their positions. Every attack was met with strategy, every movement anticipated. Kale realized that the strength of humanity, the courage to face impossible odds, the will to protect others was evident not just in him but now in Leora. Then, the enemy leader appeared, a tall figure with a dark cloak, wielding a weapon that pulsed with dangerous energy. The enemy halted, surveying the battlefield. Kyle stepped forward, energy spear ready. Leora moved beside him, small but unafraid. "This ends here," Kale shouted. "Leave now or face the strength of Eldara." The leader laughed, a cold echoing sound. "You are brave, human. But bravery alone will not save you." Kale did not flinch. "Then we will fight together." He glanced at Leora. "Ready?" Leora nodded. "Always." The two of them moved as one, charging the enemy leader. Kale's spear clashed against the enemy's weapon, energy sparking with every strike. Leora darted in and out, striking precise blows, disrupting the enemy's movements. The enemy leader was strong, but he had not expected their coordination. Kale's experience and Leora's agility created openings. Each strike was calculated, each movement precise. Slowly, the leader was pushed back, unable to adapt to their seamless teamwork. "Now, Leora!" Kale shouted, spotting the opportunity. Leora lunged, striking at the enemy's weapon, disarming him. The energy weapon fell with a metallic clatter, and the enemy leader staggered, shocked. Kale delivered a final controlled strike, incapacitating him without causing permanent harm. The remaining attackers, seeing their leader defeated, faltered. The palace warriors pressed forward and the enemy retreated, disappearing into the forest. Eldara had survived. The courtyard was silent except for heavy breathing and the murmurs of relief. Kale looked at Leora, her small form standing tall despite exhaustion. "We did it," he said softly. "We did it together," she corrected, smiling faintly. The queen appeared, her silver cloak gleaming in the sunlight. She walked toward Kale and Leora, her expression proud. "You have done more than I could have hoped," she said. "You have defended Eldara, protected my daughter, and inspired all who witnessed your courage. Your bond has proven stronger than any enemy." Kale bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only did what I had to," the queen smiled. "What you did was more than duty. You showed honor, courage, and loyalty. That is the essence of what we value. Kyle, by saving Leora and standing beside her, you have become part of our clan. Not as a servant, but as a protector, a hero, and a trusted ally." Leora stepped forward, her eyes shining. "Kale," she said softly, "you always protected me even when it was dangerous. You never gave up. I want you to stay with us. Not because the queen said so, but because I know I can trust you." Kale felt a warmth in his chest. He had faced countless dangers, but never had he felt such pride and responsibility. "I will stay," he said firmly. "I will protect you, Leora and Eldara, for as long as I am able." The queen nodded, her expression approving. "Then it is settled. You are part of our clan, Kale. Your courage has earned not just honor, but family. Eldara will thrive because of your bond with my daughter and the strength you have shown." For the first time, Kale allowed himself to relax. The battle was over and Eldara was safe. Leora stood beside him, small but brave, a living reminder of why courage mattered. Together they had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. As the sun set over Eldara, painting the skies in shades of red and gold, Kyle and Leora stood on the palace walls, watching the horizon. The kingdom was safe, at least for now, and they had proven that courage, skill, and loyalty could overcome even the greatest threats. Kale looked down at Leora. "We made it," he said quietly. Leora smiled, a mixture of relief and pride in her eyes. "We did it together," she repeated. The stars began to shine over Eldara, and the wind carried a sense of peace through the palace. Kale knew that challenges would come again, enemies would always exist, but he also knew that together, he and Leora could face anything. The people of Eldara would remember this day, the day when